All right, we are live 5 minutes early, November the 26th, 2025. And this is going to be, I guess, part one of my review of climate trails. And I have a few observations about this. And one of the things I want to point out from the beginning here, having looked at this documentary, and I'm only a third of the way through. Is it a mockumentary? Is it a documentary? Whatever it is, I'm only a third of the way through, and it's mostly filler. Like, it's pretty low effort, and we'll go through it bit by bit. But what I'm realizing here is that the climate change people on the left have their entire propaganda, I guess, their entire body of propaganda is like emphasized by the state. Like, everybody believes in climate change. That's the official thing. But the chemtrail stuff has always been relegated to conspiracy theory. It's never been acknowledged. They're treated like kooks. But you'll notice the right will call environmentalists kooks, as though there's something crazy about vandalizing artwork and laying down in streets to save the planet. But each side mutually calls the other side conspiracy theorists, basically foolish. They're overreacting. Like, Greta Thunberg's considered a joke to the right. Well, now the right-wing chemtrail people have become chemtrail Gretas. So climate trails is just a rebranding of chemtrails, and it's kind of clever because it grabs this key word from climate change. So again, just to make this clear, any bifurcated psychological operation, if it's perfectly split down the middle, it's a good indication of a controlled dialectic. So left believes in climate change, and right laughs at that because they believe in chemtrails. But chemtrails is actually better defined here as anti-geoengineering. And there's a few things I can say about that. One of them is that the people who are anti-geoengineering don't know what geoengineering is. None of them do. And I've been telling them for years. I explained to them that this is actually a set of hypothetical solutions to climate change. Well, if this isn't real, why are we afraid of the hypothetical solutions to it? They never get that far because they're outraged by the lines in the sky. And the arguments supporting chemtrails are getting to be ridiculous. So just at the very front, there's this, I want to point out too, that you cannot predict chemtrails. So you already lost your argument. If you still believe in it, you're acting foolish. There's some logical fallacies that you need to confront because that's your own operating system. It's not about me saying I'm right and you're wrong. It's about me pointing out that if you believe in this, you are vulnerable to faulty causality, appeals to motive, loaded questions, appeals to ignorance, and the shifting of the burden of proof. And these are only 5, and there's more, of the logical fallacies used to get you to accept this ridiculous premise. And if you're comfortable having these holes in your mental immune system, if you want to be vulnerable to mind viruses and susceptible to low effort propaganda like climate trails, then feel free and don't correct yourself. I'm not trying to tell you that you're wrong. But again, if you're a chemtrail believer, it's not that you're lying to yourself, but that you're vulnerable to certain lies, and then you become a repeater of these lies. And I've made this clear for some time. I actually wrote a book called The Chemtrail Hoax to explain this, but I'm going to actually update that book today after I finish watching this documentary, which I paid $5 for. I paid them. I feel bad. I paid them for their dishonesty. So contrails are well understood. If you believe in chemtrails, you're telling me that you can't tell the difference between predictable, modelable, like you can create a model that predicts contrails. So you can't tell the difference between something that's predictable and something that's unsupported. unsubstantiated. It would be the exact same thing, and here's an analogy. Believing in chemtrails would be like believing that Bigfoot's in the woods instead of grizzly bears. Well, you can study the bears, their footprints, their droppings. You can pretty much know where they're going to be year round. It's not hard to study these things if you're out there in the woods. But what these guys are doing is they're not going out into the woods. They're just claiming it's Bigfoot, not bears. And if they actually studied contrails and considered the implications of their predictability, they wouldn't have this problem. And when I say problem, you'll see, because as I go through the documentary, one of the guys gets emotional and he cries because he said he can't go outside anymore. And they feel bad taking their kids out there. So now, the main point, though, here is that chemtrail has been masking as a grassroots conspiracy theory. Like, these are the people, and the media doesn't listen to them. We're waking up. Well, what's become very clear to me now is that the chemtrail thing is blowing up. There's like 33 states now that have passed some kind of attempts to ban it. And this is all lending credibility to them. So what they're doing is they're kind of giving a nod to the chemtrail activists the way that the leftist media gives a nod to the climate change activists. Now, let me go ahead and, 1 second here, turn on my phone. You know what? I hate to do this, but I think I got a royalty payment, and I need to shut off my card before Netflix comes in and takes a swipe, so just bear with me. I don't know if you can hear me right now. It's always like that with these streaming services. It's like they're sitting there waiting, and as soon as you get a direct deposit, they go in and they swipe it, and they're forced to watch more movies. Okay, we're good to go. We are clear. Now, again, appreciate your patience here. So we're going to go through my notes, and I'm not going to review the movie on the screen yet. John Francis says, most of my mates are chemtrail advocates. I'm not an advocate for it. I know the tech exists. It's not occurring. Yeah, it doesn't even exist. Cody Sims, can you write my name on the board? Cody Sims 2444. Yeah, exactly, Kevin Mooring. Why hasn't Greta jumped on the chemtrail train? Yeah, how come the environmentalists don't care about this? And most of this documentary are these people talking about the environment. It's like, why don't you go talk to the environmentalists? Okay, Sync Kid says, regardless of aluminum and other contaminants in jet fuel, don't understand, including mercury, heavy metals, and aborted fetal cells in my bloodstream. Yeah, you'll notice the anti-geoengineering and anti-chemtrails are linked. And so let me address that too. Because again, you've been psyoped if you believe either of these. If you're in an anti-position, you're on the world stage. And okay, talking about aluminum, you think these things are dropping aluminum? It's like, it's one of the most, I think it might even be, I don't know, I gotta look at the stats on it. But out of all the naturally occurring elements in the Earth's crust, I think aluminum is like the top one. And so it's in the ground, it's in the clay, it's getting blown around. It's ground-based aluminum that these people are measuring, and they're claiming it's coming from airplanes. What's up, Howard? Thank you for joining. Dragon Fan says hi, question mark, question mark. Okay, so now here's the thing. So climate change theory is that the activities of man are causing the Earth to heat up, which you can blame on capitalism, the use of fossil fuels. In other words, the right wing and what they advocate. The climate change thing has often been described as watermelon Marxism, green on the outside, red on the inside, because it does suggest a lot of centralized control in order to save the planet. So instead of saving the poor, it's saving the planet, but it's the same dialectic. You even hear the term climate justice thrown around leftist parades, the peaceful protests. Well, social justice, climate justice, these things have been linked. So climate change actually blames the right, and it frames in their class warfare that, oh, they're causing the earth to be destroyed with their greed. The rich are doing it. The poor countries are more affected. So they think the world's being destroyed by the right. Well, the right wingers, and this includes conspiracy theories, because if you don't know, if you're a red pillar, you are in a subset of right wing politics. On the right side of the political horseshoe, on the woke right side, you have the red pills. Inside of that section, in that subset. So you're espousing a right wing belief. You can't say it's not political. When you say you believe in geoengineering or you're anti geoengineering, you believe in chemtrails. Yeah, that's a right wing belief. Whether you like it or not, you've politicized yourself. So the point of it is, who does the right blame for geoengineering? The government, the left. Secret government projects that are against the free market. They're blaming the right for causing the damage to the climate, but it's actually being done by geoengineering. So they each blame each other. It's perfectly bifurcated. This is a classic psyop. So if you're in the anti-geoengineering camp, I'm looking at you like a mind war casualty. But here's what's interesting. Geoengineering is a set of hypothetical solutions to climate change. Like, we might need to block the sun. It's not really what they're going to do, but these are hypotheticals. These aren't actual technologies. But the right wingers, the conspiracy theorists, believe that geoengineering exists. And in their imaginations, it's actually very advanced, and it's weather weapons, and it modifies the weather. That doesn't exist, but they think it does, so they oppose it. It's like, oh, I'm anti-weather weapons. Well, weather weapons don't exist. What are you anti? But the problem is both sides, and here's the key here, both sides agree that Gaia is dying, that we are destroying the earth. Perfect Hegelian dialectic. Left blames right, right blames left. They both agree that man is screwing up the planet, and therefore we need some kind of regulation. They both agree. And throughout this documentary, Climate Trails, they're talking about the need to unify. This is beyond politics. I think I've heard that from Greta. Now, to continue here, lasers go Q. What about black pilled? I guess I'm black pilled. The problem with black pill is they believe all the lies. They just don't think there's anything to do about it. Like, yeah, we're being chemtrailed and vaxxed to death, and illegal immigrants are genociding my people. Like, they believe all the claptrap, but there's no basis for it. It's pessimism based on propaganda. It means you're an auto believer, because if you actually studied the issues, you wouldn't believe in them. You wouldn't have a black pill. In fact, you would have a quiescence, peace of mind. You would exit the mind war. This is psychological warfare. It's meant to put a war in your mind, and they've succeeded. If you're black pilled, they defeated you. In fact, you haven't stepped outside of their psychological warfare zone. You just laid on the ground, and you're just absorbing the propaganda and embracing nihilism. It's just a dream. So to continue, this is what's interesting, is the proposed solution to climate change, geoengineering, is opposed by them. Like, oh, we're against their solution to the fake problem. Well, the same people who are anti-geoengineering are anti-vax. And what are they against? They're against the solution to the problem these guys believe in, which is the pandemic. And the other side says the pandemic's not real. So you see these patterns in how people position themselves on these issues. And what I'm pointing out here is that all of the popular right-wing conspiracy theories, I say right, the red pill conspiracy theories, are right-wing. And that should bother you. If you're not political, if you're not planning on voting for a politician to, I don't know, save you from something, I don't know what people are voting for anymore. I mean, it's just such a clown show. But you should know that all of the red pill conspiracies are a subset of woke right. And woke right is based around the J pill. which is the opposite of the critical race theory, which blames systemic racism and whiteness for the world's problems, including climate change. On the opposite side, they blame Israel for everything. This is template. This is every single issue. This is why Charlie Kirk's fake assassination is blamed on Israel. So if you're falling into these categories, you're programmed, because the political horseshoe and all of the beliefs within are contained within the world stage closed system of information. So just so you know, if you're pushing chemtrail belief, they got you. And I'm here to help. I mean, I don't care if people want to get political and believe this stuff. It's your religion. Who am I to criticize it? But you should know it's a religion. These aren't fact-based beliefs. It's purely ideological. And this is the state religion. They don't care if you worship one of the archaic gods, traditional gods, or if you worship the new gods. And there are many of them. I mean, we're living in a shared global paradigm, and they've just updated religious iconography with science fiction and scientism. But it's the same stuff. So a couple of things here. Here's a list of fallacies that are vulnerabilities for you if you believe in chemtrails. So if you believe in chemtrails, here are some of your weak spots. And these are weaknesses. These are not things to be proud of. This isn't something where you should say, I'm awake because I believe in this. No, you should be ashamed that you fell for it. First of all, there's the burden of proof. We'll deal with that. The appeal to ignorance. And these are clever rhetorical strategies that are used to get you to accept it, where it sounds logical, but it's actually not. One of the biggest ones, one of the biggest of all here are the loaded questions. We'll get to these ones. These ones always trip people up. Appeal to motive. I'm about 30 minutes in. It feels like it's been on for 4 hours. I've been having a hard time watching this. And then faulty causality is another one that gets people. So these are just 5 of the logical fallacies. Now, again, you believe in chemtrails, it's because you're being tricked. And here's how you're being tricked. We'll go with the loaded question. When somebody points at the sky and they say, what are they spraying? You're looking at an airplane with a trail behind it, and the way they frame the question is that there's something in the plane that is being sprayed, which implies a substance. Well, that question is loaded with the faulty premise that there's something in the plane, because it assumes, of course, its own conclusion that there is a spray. And now we just got to decide what is in it. But the real question should be, what are the lines behind the plane? Because you don't know if it's being sprayed. What are the lines? Well, the lines are, turns out, behind every airplane, there's a trail of hot air, hot exhaust. And above 30,000 feet, where the air is freezing, that hot, moist exhaust happens to condense. And the condensation freezes. You're looking at ice. Even if you wanted to spray the sky, there's not enough material to put in any single plane to create these trails of these lengths. Those trails you're looking at is not exhaust. It's ice. I mean, it's atomized bits of exhaust, little particulates that are nucleizing into these droplets that freeze, but you're looking at ice, cirrus clouds. So again, what are they spraying? Does a couple of things. It assumes a spray, which gets you asking the wrong question, so you get the wrong answers. And guess who gives you the wrong answers? The person asking you the loaded question. Okay, the second part of it is the question contains also an appeal to ignorance fallacy. This means that it's not known. They're implying they don't know. Like, what are they spraying suggests it's not known. I don't know what it is, therefore it's not known. Well, that's actually false, because contrails have been very well understood. The Air Force made a great deal of effort into preventing their planes from being spotted, because these are military planes. So they learned how to avoid creating contrails. Again, it's not something being sprayed out of the plane. because the plane's always going to have hot exhaust. The question is it going to cause a condensation trail? Well, it depends on conditions. And there are charts that they use to determine whether or not it's safe to fly through a certain zone at this time, because they wouldn't want to leave a trail. So the appeal to ignorance suggests it's not known. And this works on people who don't know what contrails are. So they actually reach out to people who don't know any better. Then you have the faulty causality. They'll say, well, you see those lines in the sky? Yeah. Now later today, it's going to be overcast. So A becomes, we'll say A is the trail, B is the overcast. Because A happens before B, A caused B. That's faulty causality. Because what's happening here is that the overcast is a result of the existing weather conditions. It was going to be overcast anyway. The fact that you see trails merely reveals those conditions conducive to an overcast day. It was going to be overcast anyway. Skies have been gray before the advent of commercial airlines. So now what you're looking at here is the plane with its hot air is going through this environment that's going to lead to an overcast day. And because of the environment, it leaves a trail. So they see the trails before the day actually turns gray, and they assume the trails caused the gray. That's faulty causality. You see the same thing used by chemtrail proponents like Crow. I think it's 2 R's. How many sevens is it? Crow 777777 says that if you see chemtrails, you just boil vinegar in your front yard and the chemtrails will go away. Well, he puts the chemtrails out A, and B, I'm sorry, he puts the vinegar out A, and then B, the chemtrails go away. Well, sure. They went away after he put the vinegar out there, but does it mean that the vinegar caused them to go away? No, they were going to go away anyhow. He just took credit for it. That's faulty causality. Now, next one, appeal to motive. So I did this thorough debunking of every argument in favor of chemtrails, and one of its proponents came to me and said, oh, so you're saying that the deep state loves us so much that they're not going to spray chemicals in our face every day? I'm like, I'm not saying that, but it stumped me. So everyone's like, yeah, this guy just thinks that Illuminati love us and they're not throwing stuff in our face. Okay, I'm like, what the hell is that? So now they just did away with all the arguments against their claims, and they just said the bad guys are so bad, it's safe to assume they're doing bad things to us. Yeah, the bad guys, the hypothetical bad guys are so bad that everything is now, no, sorry. That's called appeal to motive, not a valid argument. Burden of proof. The person making the extraordinary claim owns the burden of proof, and they'll say stuff like, well, you just need to look up. How many times have I been told? I can't even count. Oh, you just need to look up. You don't look up at the skies. You need to touch grass. You know, you don't see it. You're not looking. And I'm like, wait a minute here. You're the ones who tell me the sky is gray and no longer blue, and I see it as blue. Like, I look up plenty. So they try to shift the burden of proof to you. Oh, if you don't believe them, instead of providing evidence, they will tell you that you just need to look. That's like saying, oh, you don't believe in unicorns? Well, go hang out in the woods. Look for them. No. Anything that's presented without evidence can be dismissed without any evidence. Hitchens' razor. Okay, so continue here. Now, this documentary, Climate Trails, opens up with a song called Look Up by the conspiracy music guru. And he does sing about how the skies are now gray. They're no longer blue. And a lot of people who believe stuff, and this is in general, believers in general are a bunch of liars. And I mean this, like, not in a way that they're intentionally lying, but a lot of them are basically lying to conform, not maliciously lying, but it's intentional. Like they will say, oh yeah, like I used to get calls like this, and it was always cringe because I don't want to be the bad guy. And so I think I've been so nice that people just think they can call in. I'm just going to validate their beliefs, and I don't jump on it and say, I think you're lying. But sometimes I think I should. I used to get these calls where people would say, well, I went outside and I saw these 3 planes fly over, and they were military jets, unmarked. I checked my flight tracker and they weren't on the flight tracker. And then the lines spread out and the entire day was gray. I'm like, cool story, bro. I've heard the same thing word for word from every other chemtrail believer. Oh, yeah, I saw the lines and they spread out, and I looked and they were unmarked jets and they weren't being tracked. Yeah, I don't think you got a flight tracker in your pocket. I don't think you're actually engaging in any rigorous observations and that you're recording stuff. You're lying. In fact, one of the guys in this Climate Trails documentary, the guy with the cowboy hat who they bring up as the expert, claims that he brings out a telescope. He says, I whip out my little telescope and I look at the planes that are leaving the trails and they got a hole in the back. Okay. So now he's making up planes with holes in the back that are spraying. Just straight up lying. So now you have this woman on there who said she's part of the Air Force group that supplied the chemicals. So some people are still saying that there's chemicals in the spray. Others have realized that there's not really an argument for this, and they've moved past it. And they're not saying chemicals, but we'll leave that. They're still using it. So the cowboy guy, his name is Francis Mangles. He's a USDA scientist. And he said he was beat up 3 times by men in black types who didn't want him to expose chemtrails, because he goes to the Mount Shasta City Council, and he's the guy who sees the planes with the single hole in the back through his little telescope. So the guy's lying for attention. I mean, we can be nice and say, no, he's actually no, come on. You can't be emotionally manipulated by crisis actors, and you can't be manipulated by liars who act really nice, so you're afraid to call them liars, which is not a nice thing to do. Okay, next. So I did a little bit of, I was just looking, the main thing here is aluminum. And I looked into it. It just seems like they're confusing ground-based aluminum with the idea that it came from the planes. So now you have Andrew Kaufman. He's on there as well. They're playing sad music, and he's talking about how we're inhaling strontium and it's causing everybody to have Alzheimer's. Josh Nelson was crying, and he said, I get emotional because I want to go outside and I don't go out. And he talks about his personal journey with chemtrails and how he learned to be alone at home, but being alone at home makes you depressed. Tanner Stewart, who used to be the flat earth millionaire, talked about nanoparticles that we're inhaling, and that he said it gave us, quote, Alzheimer's. Yeah, Alzheimer's. Then we had Ariana Masters talking about there's a difference between chemtrails and contrails. So they actually acknowledge that contrails exist, but they say there's a difference between contrails and chemtrails, and they can tell the difference. Okay, well, prove it. They don't. Again, airplanes leave a trail of hot air, and whether or not it leaves a trail of ice in the sky depends on weather conditions. There's not a spray. Anybody saying what are they spraying is using a logical fallacy. They're tricking you. One of the guys was talking about these very suspicious X's in the skies. Yeah, you know, I noticed that whenever I drive around like cities, like downtown, the streets, like they cross each other. Like, you know, like one road and then another road. And so it's like these, it's like an X. Yeah, it's an intersection, because that's your drive paths. These are roads. Airplanes have flight paths. That's why they crisscross. One of the other guys was talking about curved, and I saw some of these the other day above the airport. Curved trails. like it's some special op. No, those are planes in holding patterns, circling around, waiting to land on the runway. Okay, now the flat Earth millionaire, the guy with the beard, he's like, yeah, contrails exist, but only when it's cold. Well, how about only where it's cold? Because it's very cold at 30,000 feet all the freaking time. That's why you don't have chemtrails like on the way down to the airport. That's why you don't have these supposed chemtrails at different altitudes going from the ground up, because it's not a trail of a substance deposited by the plane. If it was, they wouldn't only exist in the stratosphere. You don't see supposed chemtrails going up 45 degrees at an angle, going down. No, why are they always flat? It's because they're at the stratospheric layer because of the temperature. They're not spraying chemtrails. Like you look at the airports. Do you see trails pointing to the airport? Oh, see all those white trails? They all land where the airports are? No, you don't. All right, continuing. Yeah, this guy, the cowboy, I just marked here as a liar. The telescope where he said he saw the airplane with the. He said it was an odd jet, a quote, an odd jet. And I had people who used to call in and tell me they saw unmarked planes that might have been drones. Like they were all lying. And this has been very clear since January when New Jersey was flipping out over drones. Turns out there weren't any drones, it was all airplanes. And all the popular videos showing drones were debunked as actually being airplanes. So the beard guy with the hat, Flat Earth Millionaire, he said, now because so many people are waking up, they're spraying us at nighttime. They're spraying us at nighttime. He said he saw the moon and then they sprayed in front of it because we're waking up. So while we're asleep, they're spraying it. And he says, and they're blanking the sky in gray fog. No, again, the trails are the result of cold, freezing, rarefied air and these hot columns of air caused by the jet exhaust just interacting with the environment in these upper altitudes. It's not rocket science. It's not that complicated. He also said when they spray, people get sick. Again, when they spray. Injecting into the conversation the lie that the airplanes are actually squirting something and that it's getting you sick. They're alleging that these airplanes are engaging in chemical warfare. And I bet these guys fly to their climate change or their chemtrail conferences. You know, Naomi Wolf, you might know who she wrote The Shock Doctrine. Naomi Wolf is this pundit, bestseller, but she's a major chemtrail pusher. And she flies around the country selling her books on feminism and stuff. And I'm like, how can you get into a weapon that's dumping poisons on children and families and innocent people? Like you're participating in genocide. Now you had, oh yeah, okay. Now I'm only halfway through, not even that. And they're talking about how we need to collectively unite left and right to oppose geoengineering. So even the people in this documentary don't know that geoengineering consists of hypothetical solutions to what is most likely a fake problem. Geoengineering refers to hypothetical solutions to global warming, as in these things don't actually exist. These are hypothetical proposed solutions. So we need to unite against these. Again, this is a perfect example of Hegelian dialectics, where you get the left and the right to agree on a premise. We must unite to save the planet. You got chemtrail Greta's on the right. Then you got the Al Gore and Greta Thunberg on the left. Same exact agenda. And one of them said, even if you don't believe, there's no reason why you can't get behind this. And then the guy who said he's afraid to go outside, he said, what if they turn on the 5G? Okay, so the 5G towers aren't on yet, they think. And that right now, the atmosphere is being filled up with these chemicals. And at some point, someone's going to pull the switch, and the 5G towers are going to, he said, you know what happens when you put aluminum foil in the microwave? So, aluminum foil, aluminum in the sky, 5G towers. So, their idea here is they're going to ignite the atmosphere. So, it's not bad enough that they've destroyed the air and killed our crops, turned the sky gray, and now we can't see the sun anymore. But they're going to ignite the atmosphere. This is why I say that the red pill fictional universe is nightmarish. So you leave the blue pill because you see these people are dreaming, and you're like, oh, look, I woke up. Now I'm red pill. No, you didn't wake up. You transitioned into a nightmare. Now you're afraid of the sky igniting, and you think that the skies are gray. That's mind control. Then you have the Andy Kaufman guy talking about how the body gets rid of waste products, and he describes the different ways that we get rid of waste products. I don't know why we need to hear that. Flat Earth Millionaire said people are waking up to it. We want blue skies, healthy crops, clean water. We want to see the sun. We need to come together against the powerful forces. And then this other guy comes on very passionately, says that chemtrails are the preeminent fight of our generation. The preeminent fight of our generation. And that we need to stop the evil. And then I got to this part and I had to stop it, where one of the experts, and they all come off to me as SNL characters. Like, it's got to be a Poe. I mean, I get there's money in it. It's filler. And they probably realize if you make it 2 hours long, we'll get this much more money. Because I've been through half an hour and it's already filler. But she said, well, it's federal airspace above 1,000 feet. That's why we can't stop it. The federal government's in control. So the federal government's in control. It only happens above 1,000 feet because, well, it only happens really above, like, what, 30,000 feet? Because you can't have chemtrails at 1,000 feet. You can't have condensation trails at 1,000 feet. So those are my notes so far. I'm going to do a more thorough review of the thing. I thought I was going to sit down and watch it and review it. And I was really put off by the low effort, but also they haven't improved their rhetorical strategies. They're relying on the same appeals to ignorance, loaded questions, shifting the burden of proof, faulty causality, and the appeals to motive. I would place this as, I mean, I'll say unicorn belief, because I get it. Bears sometimes walk on two legs, and you could mistake that for a Bigfoot. But there's no reason you're going to see a unicorn, a winged unicorn. But yeah, if you believe in chemtrails, you may as well say, well, maybe they're caused by the Pegasus up in the atmosphere marking their territory. Like, you may as well introduce fantastical explanations if that's what you're reaching for. If you're not interested in the evidence, like, oh, anything goes. There's this logic that I refer to as maybe Bigfoot logic. And this was inspired by a couple of friends who went camping. One of them believed in Bigfoot, the other did not. And the next day, they reported that they heard noises in the woods at night. And so one of them said, I think it was Bigfoot. And the others said, no, it was a raccoon. So here's A, B, C, and D. Bigfoot, deer, hiker, raccoon. Okay, so you're in the woods and you hear a noise. What is it? A, B, C, or D? Without even referencing any specific wilderness, you can already answer this question. Well, you can rule out one of these. Bigfoot shouldn't even be an option because Bigfoot has never been demonstrated to exist. So when somebody says it might have been Bigfoot, maybe it was Bigfoot, no, you don't even get to include that in the universe of ideas that are being assessed here as possible answers or explanations. You can't even include it. I see the same thing with UFO sightings, where people say, well, I saw a light in the sky. Maybe it was the space station. Maybe it was a flying saucer. No, the list of possibilities for a light in the sky right now: airplane, helicopter, and I don't know. I'm not even going to include, I'll include drone, but highly unlikely. When people report seeing a light in the sky, they want to say maybe it was a UFO. Maybe it was the ISS. No, no. And to make these claims like ISS, you would need to have additional information to corroborate that. But generally speaking, you can't let people use this type of maybe Bigfoot logic to insert into the possible answers something impossible. Saint Kid says autism and cancer increase a hoax. Well, even if there isn't an increase, you haven't made any correlation between the cirrus clouds at 30,000 feet and what you're describing. And this is another thing they're tending to do, is they're saying, oh, it's causing Alzheimer's. No, this is what you would have to bring up, is that correlation is not causation. There are many reasons why you have people who are getting Alzheimer's. Maybe our extended life, I mean, our life expectancy goes up. We're going to have more people having conditions that are associated with old age. But you have no way of correlating or proving the two, and you haven't even demonstrated that chemtrails exist. So now here's one more thing, and if you can't get past this, then the Matrix has you. And that's fine. There are so many mind war casualties. I'm not trying to save them. The off-world stage perspective is outside of these political boxes, and conspiracy theories are a subset of far-right politics. So if you want to still follow all of the big popular conspiracy theories, yeah, okay, fine. Stay in your box, but you're not going to see through the world stage paradigm and the bigger picture here. You're going to be caught in these rabbit trails. And they're not even real rabbit trails. They're paved by the CIA. Okay, so predictability. Contrails. And then chemtrails. And the implications here are very significant for whether or not you should continue to believe in them. So can you predict contrails? Yes. Can you predict chemtrails? No. So what does this mean? It means simply that one of them doesn't exist. You have no model. You have no model by which you can say, they're going to spray us tomorrow at this time. But if you look at the other side, yes, you can. In fact, I made an app for this where I went through and I basically said the app to the AI that was creating it, I said, I need an app that will cross-reference flight trackers with the weather conditions in my area. And based on this, give me a map of the trails that I will see above my city throughout the day. And it was very easy to do, where using various websites, looking at the climate, cross-referencing with flight paths and their altitudes and their times, you can actually predict when you're going to see contrails. And then you could also determine how persistent they will be. There is no way you can predict chemtrails. So since there's no predictability and that for these chemtrails, you can't really assert that it's a better explanation for what we're seeing than contrails. So there's no way that you can actually assert contrails are not the better of the two explanations. So the predictability thing is really a deal breaker. And that's pretty much the end of it as far as being a serious conversation. And now what it just comes down to are people with their anecdotal observations with no tangible evidence. The people who will say they saw military jets, or the people who boil vinegar in their yard and dance around till the sky gets clear. Like, you're not going to change their minds. They're believers. And there's a fundamental difference between believers and understanders, people who know. I had someone comment yesterday on my channel, and I actually blocked him for it. I can read his comment if you care, but basically what he said was, I appreciate the off-world stage perspective. I agree with you on everything, but chemtrails are real. Okay, well, first of all, they don't exist. But even if they did, let's just entertain that if they do. Well, then who's doing it? And is it really affecting the climate? Can you prove it? But anyway, it's a popular conspiracy theory masquerading as a grassroots movement to wake people up. I'm going to update my book, The Chemtrail Hoax, after I finish watching this documentary. And I think what I'll do is I'll probably take some screenshots and some clips. This Amazon documentary, again, Climate Trails, is really not even a true documentary. There's no investigative reporting. They're not talking to pilots. It's really just old, recycled conspiracy claptrap. But it's important to call it out because a lot of these things are spread by people who are dishonest. SyncKid says no proof for chemtrails. Focus should be on poison, food, vaccines, and pharmaceuticals. I don't know. I kind of think these are fake issues. I think these are fake issues, like the anti-big pharma. I think these are positions or political positions, like poison food. Like everything's like you're all gonna die. You can't eat the food. You can't breathe the air. Monsanto. These are all buzzwords from InfoWars. Like if you're drinking the Kool-Aid in Alex Jonestown, everything is toxic to you. And it reminds me of religions, how they designate all these things are wicked, these are haram, this is sin. So you join the truther cult, truther religion, which is a form of wokeism, by the way. And now you have this new lens through which you can view the world. And this new lens, this woke lens, lets you know how toxic and bad and poisonous everything is, and we're all dying. But it's a bunch of doom and gloom with nothing to substantiate it. So no, I'm not going to focus on poisons, foods, vaccines, pharmaceuticals, because to me that's just fear porn. You're basically obsessed with hypothetical situations. You're afraid. You're paranoid. If you're afraid of something that's not real, if you're afraid of a hypothetical, if you're essentially afraid of delusions, you are a paranoid. And do you want to be paranoid? No, there's a difference between paranoia, which is irrational, and situational awareness. And situational awareness is what you consider awake people imagine themselves to be. Like, oh, we're just awake to the threats. And I'm saying they've been given a false sense of situational awareness. They've in fact been given paranoia because there's no facts to substantiate any of the things that they're afraid of. And they say, well, I'm not afraid. Well, you're telling us to be afraid. So you are afraid. You're telling me I should be worried about it, then you're scared. Where's your mask? And I asked the chemtrail people this: if you're so afraid, why do you go outside? How do you justify not wearing a mask for chemtrails? Why don't you sue the airlines? And what you get is a bunch of learned helplessness. Like, oh, we can't do anything. We're just victims. We're oppressed. And this is typical of wokeism on the left and the right. So wokeism entails a couple of things. It entails the oppressor and oppressed dynamic. So if you're woke left, you got rich versus poor, you got whiteness versus the world, the West versus the world, but you got this oppressor, and then you're one of the oppressed. And if you're a victim of climate change, as we all are, you're oppressed by the system doing the climate change to you. But woke right has a secret ruler, a secret oppressor. Sometimes they name it, sometimes they don't. But you know who they blame it on. But ultimately, it comes down to the system of, they'll say the globalists, they'll say the transhumanists. These are all euphemisms for Israel, but they have their oppressor, and you are being oppressed by them because you're being forced as they say in this video, like, oh, well, people can't really fight it because they have to go to work, they have to breathe the air, they don't have a choice. So we're being oppressed by a system that forces us to work under these conditions. And they reinforce again and again the notion that we're forced to breathe it in. The guy at the cowboy hat with the telescope who sees the planes with a special hole in the back, that guy, he says, I just don't like all these chemicals being forced down my throat without my permission. Oh, okay. So somebody said, oh, do I have your permission to force these chemicals down your throat? You would give it to me? Skepticism of lying government is not the opposite of wearing a mask and not taking fear-based injections. Yeah, and okay, look, this, and you might not like this, but that's fine. But this is true. You got pro and anti. These are all controlled dialectics. And if you take a pro position, like let's say you're pro pokey, and I don't like saying it because, you know, we get censored. Okay, that's one position. And then you have the anti pokey. Okay, well, both of these are controlled oppositions. Anti is controlled opposition to pro, pro is controlled opposition to anti. And if you buy the premise, either way, you're scared. You're either scared of the virus or you're scared of the cure. Same thing with geoengineering. You know, it's like you're scared of climate change on the left, or you're scared of the solution to climate change on the right, which is geoengineering. Either way, you're scared. So I'm just pointing out here that you're scared. Sync Kid is scared. You're scared of the sky. You're scared of 5G towers. They might switch it on because it's not on right now. When they turn it on, it's going to light, all the clouds are going to explode. And you're scared of pharmaceuticals. You're scared of the government. So you're also anti-government, anti-G and pro-G. Now, I'm not anti-government. I'm not pro-government in this sense. I have a radically different interpretation of what government is, given that government uses media, entertainment, religion, academia, all of the above in a monolithic way to completely fabricate our worldview and insert fictional events into our agreed upon consensus of what is going on in the world and what has happened. So my view of government is different than your view. And what I'm saying is that your version of government is likely a construct to oppose the state worship on the left. So again, you don't have the moral high ground if you're scared of Bill Gates and you're scared of airplanes, and you certainly don't have the intellectual high ground. I would argue that because you're anti, I would consider you to be controlled opposition to the off-world stage, just like the pro. If you're pro or anti, both of you are controlled opposition to the off-world stage perspective, because you're both promoting a bifurcated war. You're both part of the duopoly. Like, you are controlled opposition. And I'll help you out on this one. Do you have to be anti just because you're scared of the needle or you just don't trust? Well, you don't have to be anti. You can be non. Are you anti-smoker? Are you anti-drinker? Because you don't do those things? No, you're not. You're a non-smoker. You're a non-drinker. So that if you're in the anti position, it means the propagandists have gotten you to take position in their closed system. And these things are part of belief clusters. You can't just be anti one thing. If you're anti geoengineering, you're anti this, you're going to be anti a whole list of things. You're programmed. Thank you, Frank Murr. Appreciate the support here. Fuel for the IPS think tank. Now, there's a reason why we're doing this. We want to separate the off-world stage perspective, which is an emergent third branch of media that has the position of informed disbelief. So we're not just calling things fake. We're skeptics here. We're suspending judgment until we have more facts. And we have more facts than the people who believe this crap on the pro or anti side. We don't want the pro positions to flood the off-world stage. Not that they would, but we would be vastly outnumbered by people who aren't critically thinking. We don't want antis flooding our zone because we would be outnumbered by people who don't utilize critical thinking. They're victims of propaganda, whether they go with it or they're anti. So this is the position of anti-anti and anti-pro. So again, you might not like hearing this, but if your position is I'm anti-vax and you're not non-vax, it means that you're involved in a political horseshoe, which is essentially, this to me is the containment operation. Like you wake up from the blue pill normie existence, and if you lean left, you go to woke town, where you believe in climate change and systemic racism. If you lean right, you go to Trutherville, where you believe in chemtrails and Jewish world domination. Those are your only options. It's either or. And so the idea of controlled opposition goes beyond just a few plants, a couple of agents trying to influence you. No, the entire infrastructure of alt media is controlled opposition to the mainstream. The mainstream, all of it, is controlled opposition to the alternative. So whether you take the alt or the mainstream position, you are controlled opposition to anybody outside of their collective Truman Show. We are the uncontrolled opposition out here. So yes, I'm opposed to you if you're on either one of these sides. You're equally my ideological opponent. Like I'm against Greta, but I'm also against chemtrail pushers. This is given away in so many different areas. I mean, I was talking the other day about the billionaire villain thing. So if you're on the left, your saviors are people like Bill Gates and George Soros. These guys are saviors on the left. They're saving the world. But the right sees them as villains. And then on the right, their saviors are billionaires like Elon Musk, in particular, saves free speech. He's going to save the world. But to the left, the richest man in the world is a villain. So how can you be a savior and a villain at the same time? Is that possible? No. No, it's not possible. These things are mutually exclusive. Can we have climate change and secret weather weapon engineering at the same time? You know, these are mutually exclusive propositions. Chemtrails do not exist. Contrails do. Just reiterating that. Super Jimbo Kimbo says William Reich and the Cloudbusters. Yeah, I looked into that. I honestly, this is sad, but I think that they were victims of faulty causality. You know, scams, and this is common. You know, pseudoscience has pretty much been the norm until it pulls out of that. But there's a lot of it that just gets a pass. But yeah, William Reich and the idea of cloud busting. Like I knew this witch who was into this idea that she could point at a cloud and cause it to dissipate. And sure enough, you point at a cloud and it's going to go away. But it's not because of your Wicca powers. It's because it was going to go away anyhow. Just like the guy who boils the vinegar. And whatever William Reich was doing with his cloud busters, those tubes, it likely had zero to do with what was going on 30,000 feet above his head. But it's easy to trick yourself if you think that A happens before B, so A caused B. It's like I could point my finger at the sun and say, look, that ball of light over there that used to be yellow, I'm going to point at it and it's going to move to the west and it's going to go over the horizon. Yeah, look, I moved the sun. No, I didn't move the sun. The sun was going to move anyway. Faulty causality. So that's a third of the way through the documentary. I'm going to watch the rest of it. It's called Climate Trails. Plain Dakota says, if you add baking soda to your boiled vinegar, the clouds will go away faster. That's not the weirdest solution. And it's not new. You know, Ron Paul's fans used to get squirt bottles and they would spray vinegar at airplanes. And they would say it's fighting the chemtrails. That was like in 2011. So this is not new. And it's always the conspiracy theorists, red pill woke, who fall for this stuff. You know, like climate change people act foolish, but so do chemtrail people. And spraying vinegar at the skies is not a new thing. But I've also seen people praying. Like there was this trend, I don't know if it's still there. There was this trend in Trutherville where they said that the real name of Jesus is Yahushai, and other names, Yeshua, and they would pray in the name of Yeshua and Yahushai at the sky, essentially praying at the airplanes, which they claimed were actually demons in the skies, and they were putting demon juice in the sky. Commenter says, how can you not participate with the pushed back scheduling for newborns without opposition? Well, your opposition isn't real if you're just spamming propaganda on the internet. I don't think you have any rigorous observations behind your opinions that make you scared of different things. So no, I'm not anti the needle. I think that's a clear psyop. And there's a very easy to explain purpose behind it, because we're dealing with a new operating system. So on the left, you got progressivism. On the right, it's traditionalism. And the major psyops of the day, they all split along these lines. And you'll notice here, so on this side, in 2020, we'll talk about 2020, the COVID thing. The pro side, they believed in the pandemic. They believe it came out of a bowl of bat soup. But the other side, they said it was a hoax. They said it was a bioweapon. But they had skepticism against it, and they were opposed to the solution, and they were pro the solution. So they become the unsaved, and these ones become the saved, according to the progressive version of things, with their secular priesthood and the church of media and its appointed pundits. So you're saved or you're unsaved. Now the split here, though, is that the panic-demic, is what I kind of called it, is a way of introducing a new iteration of sin to the progressives. So everything from the traditional views have a counterpart in the progressive. Like traditional, they believe in angels. The progressive, they believe in aliens. Now, on the traditional side, and this is like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, MTG, they believe that aliens are demons. So there's a split here. This side doesn't believe in traditional sin. They believe in the virus. This side doesn't believe in the virus, but they believe in sin. And this is why the traditional is hit with moral panics. And the left doesn't believe in sin, so they're not responsive to moral panics. The right doesn't believe in the pandemic, so they're, of course, the anti-vax and the anti-mask. They have this split down the middle on everything. And the right-wing traditional side is positioned to be opposed to the new iteration of sin and salvation. These guys are saved by their doctrines and by their injectable Eucharist. These guys are unsaved. Contrarily, they consider them to be unsaved because they don't believe in sin and God, and they're an atheistic paradigm. Ollie Goering says that's racist, calling Mexicans demons. Oh, yeah, well, that's not insignificant. Let's get into that really quick here about the aliens. So the progressives love aliens, as I mentioned, and the traditional side says aliens are demons. And we're talking about extraterrestrials. But what about terrestrial aliens, as in illegals? Well, the left loves illegal aliens. The right says illegal aliens are criminals, demons. Trump says they're rapists. They're military-aged men. They're coming to take over and invade. So you have the xenophobia thing, which pertains to terrestrial and extraterrestrial aliens. So these guys are anti-alien. These guys are pro-alien. And even if they acknowledge the existence of aliens, they say that aliens are demons. That's why an alien demon attacked Tucker Carlson. That's why they say AI is demons. And this is all interconnected because you got closed borders, on the right because aliens. They got Trump's new branch of the military, Space Force. What's that for? Oh, to protect us from aliens. So this idea of closure, they're anti-vax because you're not going to go through my skin. Closed skin, closed borders, closed skies, closed skins. And this even pertains to the gun ownership and protecting your home. But the left, oh, they don't believe in guns. Doors open. They don't believe in borders. Open the borders. They love the aliens. Invade us, please. And down the line. So this is the side of porous, open borders, one worldism, globalism, and this is the side of nationalism, closed borders, closed skin. Plain Dakota says, ever try Haitian fried dog? Yeah, that they're gonna eat your dogs. That whole thing, that was spread by all the usual right-wing pundits. Pure misinformation, stuff out of context, but this is an information war. But no, it's not a coincidence that if you're in the box, your opinions are all going to line up. So if you're anti on one, you're anti on all of them. And I can predict people's opinions with certainty. If you're anti this, you're going to be anti A, B, C, D, and E. These are belief clusters. And ultimately, the red pill stuff is all controlled antis, controlled oppositions. They're all in the same box, but ultimately these are all in the political horseshoe. So you're woke. You're woke to the conspiracies. You're woke to who runs the world. You're fringe politics. Fringe politics is woke. Woke left, woke right. And red pill is woke. I'm not red pill. I'm not agitated. I'm not immersed in fear porn. I'm not scared. I'm not trying to wake people up to save the world. Because I don't think that the things that people are trying to save the world from actually exist. Kind of like religions. You know, they knock on your door. Yeah, we're going to save the world and I'm going to save you because the world's going to end. Oh, that's fake. Slam the door. So what you're looking at here are state-sponsored religions of wokeism on the left and the right. And these are religions. So ultimately, the alien thing is a threat about the other, the invader. This is why you have the racial purity. And this is all connected as well. So a white nationalism, and they talk about white genocide. So you don't hear these words openly, like white genocide oftentimes, but when they say, oh, we're being flooded with immigrants, well, you're the same people who think we're running out of people. Like, have more kids, we're being depopulated. And they bring in immigrants, like, oh, we don't want those ones. Well, why is that? Because they believe in white genocide. So the idea here with white nationalism, and again, whites are the enemy of the woke left, just as Jewish world domination is the enemy on the woke right. And so they're against whiteness, they're against Jewishness. This is why far right, like Nick Fuentes says, they need to get Jews out of Congress. They're actually open about this. And the far left is pretty much they have the same attitudes. I mean, this is so structured. It's such a program. We can go in a few different areas with this, but my point here is the same people who are in favor of closed borders, white nationalism. It's about blood purity. Well, they're also anti-vax, which is blood purity, and they consider the vaxxed to be goo bloods. So one side considers the other side impure, bearers of impurity. And it's kind of interesting how, and this was big in 2021, they all said, the anti-vaxxers were saying that the people who are vaxxed will get you sick through what they called spike protein shedding. So they said, you got to quarantine against the vaxxed because they will shed on you and get you sick. So wait a minute here. You mean the left side wants to quarantine against these guys because they're impure, and these guys want to quarantine against these guys because they're impure. This guy's medicine is this guy's poison. This guy's horse paste is this guy's poison. It's this way down every single issue. SyncKit says, how do we reconcile this dualism? You don't. This is directly injected into the closed informational system of the mainstream media fictional universe. This is the game. It's like a football game. You have two teams. They're not going to join teams. They're going to fight each other. They're going to oppose one another. It's a game. This is a game. The bread and circuses, entertainment as a wing of government globally, and this bifurcation is designed to keep us in a never-ending perpetual war, because war is peace. They maintain peace, the status quo. They maintain the social order of billions of people by keeping them all in a state of internal war, in constant opposition, and keeping you in a state of fear. That's why I'm calling out people who are anti and scared. You're scared of something. Well, you've been conditioned to be afraid because you're part of this bifurcated psychological war zone. Unmitigated Minus says, I think both are pretty mad at Jews right now, the international outcome. Well, I disagree on that. And here's what I mean. So the far left, woke left, is anti-Israel. Far right is anti-Israel. And by the way, mainstream Republicans are anti-Islam. So they're not good just because they're not woke right. Woke right hates Israel or hates Jews. Moderate, regular Republicans, yeah, they're anti-Islam and pro-Israel. So you have this split on the right, and it's on the anti-Israel part where you get the red pill conspiracies, which have no place in the mainstream Republican area. So the left is actually a little more forgiving. They don't distance themselves from their woke side. They call them peaceful protesters. Whereas the right distances themselves from their own fringe. They have this problem, which has been really exacerbated since 10/7. And you can see the split. But now, this is the thing about Israel, is the left opposes Israel because they oppose the West, hegemony, they oppose America, and they're pro-Palestinian. You'll never see the woke right, Nick Fuentes, getting a flotilla trying to get aid over to Palestinians. No, the left they're pro-Palestinian because they identify with this anti-colonialism. They identify with their struggle because they see it as the same reason they oppose America. They oppose Israel. So anyway, the left's opposition to Israel is based on the political structure and also because they're pro-Palestinians. That's different than being anti-Israel for the same reason as the right, because they're anti-Israel because they think that Jews are undermining Western civilization. So they're not pro-Palestinian, they're anti-Jew. Most of the pro-Palestinians on the left who are anti-Israel for that reason are actually Jewish. So they are both in opposition from the fringes to Israel, but for two different reasons. They can't unite on this. And one other point too, with this political horseshoe thing, they have comparable architecture. I call it critical race theory versus critical Jew theory. So no, they can't be reconciled. Even though they seemingly agree in a way, they actually don't, because they have a fundamental disagreement. This is anti-white, remember. Even though we refer to the far right as being racist, sexist, xenophobe, on all that stuff, that's all true. But the left side is actually based on racism as well, because they're anti-white. And I want to point something out. The woke right people will say, well, basically they blame Jews for everything, but they say like Jews killed Jesus. Jews killed Jesus. Jews did 9/11. Jews killed JFK. Jews killed Charlie Kirk. So all of them did it. They all need to somehow own up to the fact that they're collectively guilty. So the entire woke right is built on collective guilt. Oh yeah, collective guilt. Hitler wasn't such a bad guy, they say, because they believe in collective punishment. But you know what they don't believe in? They don't believe in white privilege. They don't believe in white guilt. They don't think they should pay reparations. But I'm sorry, but if you're going to blame Jews for everything, even killing Jesus, then you need to pay reparations because you're therefore agreeing with the premise of collective guilt. And collective guilt is going to be the same whether it's white guilt or J guilt. Yeah, we'll see unmitigated mind. I don't know exactly because we try to examine what's happening in the world through the lens of media at large, not just the news, but all the entertainment and what people are being programmed for. And are people being programmed with religious narratives? Absolutely. And so I'm open to interpretations as to what you think might come next based on extrapolating from what's on the world stage. But I'm just pointing out here that you may see what appears to be a point of agreement between the woke left and woke right, but it's on different grounds. I mean, there's that whole thing, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I don't know how far that will go here. Unmitigated says, I thought America and Israel have been fanning the flames for a specific outcome for some time. They're intentionally enraging as many as possible. Well, you may be right. I mean, as fake as things are, much of the rage is real. And in the latest Superman movie, Hawk Girl kills Benjamin Netanyahu. You can look it up on TikTok. I watched this. I'm like, wait a minute. The way they're framing this when I'm watching the movie, I'm like, that is definitely based on Netanyahu. Hawk Girl's carrying him up, flying somewhere, and she just looks down at him coldly and drops him from like 500 feet. Sync Kid says this place is a carnival funhouse. It's a paradox. Our beliefs are creating the play. Yeah, well, are our beliefs creating the play reality or just for the purpose of experience? See, that's a very good question because on the one hand, bread and circuses is clearly there to contain us in a controllable paradigm, like basically a religion. So on the one hand, it seems like it's there for purposes of control. There was that quote that I often read from Polybius who talks about how superstition maintains the cohesion of the Roman state. If you look up instrumentum regni on Wiki, you'll find that quote. But it talks about how, and this is not a new idea, how governments have realized that the masses are hard to control. They're fickle, lawless, and therefore they need to be managed through fear. Fear of the gods is what was referenced. That fear of the gods, that superstition can be used to control the masses. So if you look at what media does, it introduces God constructs for us to be afraid of. It introduces superstitions for us to be afraid of, to unify us in fear. And I get the idea that most of these conspiracy theories, as well as a lot of the mainstream beliefs, are simply there for our mental containment. And they have us compartmentalized. And that's one of my favorite words in this context, how they have us with our beliefs compartmentalized. Because what they have done is they have put our frame of reference mentally into two major compartments. Again, left, right, political horseshoe theory, not a theory, it's the model. And then within this, they put subsets to catch those who don't go along with the main program. So we call the main program mainstream mediation. But if you don't agree with that, you go Woketown or you go Trutherville. Well, Woketown and Trutherville are built upon mainstream mediation. They just add some extra sauce. So if you're left, you just add in the white oppressor. If you're on the right, you add the oppressor of the reptilians or the Jews or however you label it. But both of these don't subtract from the mainstream. They add on. So I call them MSM plus. But those of us who look at the mainstream as bogus, but who don't add on this particular threat, critical Jew theory or critical race theory, we don't add in the scapegoat and these conspiracies. We subtract. We subtract what we can't verify. And the more we study fake news, engineered history, events planned far in advance, the less of this stuff we have reason to believe in. So that takes us into the realm of skepticism, where you subtract unverifiable claims and you suspend judgment till you get more facts. So I refer to this as the subtractive route, MSM minus. It's outside of their controlled duopoly. This is the non-position. So you got pro, anti, and non. Non is the way to go if you're a free thinker. Non is the only place to be if you're a free thinker. And then another key point here is that these are different perspectives. Everything that you consume media wise is going to be processed through your point of view. The mainstream point of view, yeah, Charlie Kirk was killed by a crazy person. That's pretty much the mainstream point of view, which is generally shared on the left. The conspiracy version is Israel did it. Although there are some people who will have other conclusions about who did it, but basically they all agree that he died. That's the options. He's dead either way. He's dead if this guy did it. He's dead if this guy did it. Doesn't make a difference. He's dead. Our perspective includes media fakery. It includes psyops. And we also include all previous fake news, previous psyops, including the Donald Trump getting his earshot thing. So because of our additional information, we don't believe it, which puts us in the category of informed non-believers, as opposed to low information belief, faith-based belief. Yeah, faith-based belief is, I don't have enough information to believe it, so I'm just going to have faith. Okay, well, your faith doesn't add anything qualitative. It just means that you're willingly closing your eyes. Like, I'm just going to have a blind spot here. Well, we don't have any blind spots off world stage. Instead of accepting something as true with the blind spot and reducing it to a mere belief, we just say, okay, I'm not going to believe in this, and here's the reasons why. So the off world stage perspective knows more about the things we don't believe in than the believers do. Ollie Goering says, forced to participate in the psyopera just by observing and not paying attention is not an option. We end up swept up in the sea of irrelevance. Yeah, well, that's this misconception that I don't hear often is that, well, I don't watch the news. Well, it's not just the news. Mainstream mediation is every possible propaganda vector, including your education. It's not merely the news. But you have the big category is misinformed. And look, everything on the world stage is misinformed, whether you're left or right. And that's because it all rests upon decades and decades of fake events imposed over the real events. So that the mixing of fake and real, which you could call hyper reality, Baudrillard, has preceded our present worldview of today. So right now, today, the consensus version of reality contains all the fake stuff. So the consensus version of reality right now, November 2025, is misinformed. It rests upon the presupposition that this fake stuff is real. So the default position, left or right, wherever you are in the spectrum, if you're in a subset, is misinformed. If you don't pay attention to the misinformation, but you're still in this world stage, you're uninformed or under misinformed, because your frame of reference when you choose to watch the news is going to be misinformation. So there is no escape, as the commenter said. There is no escape from within the system. But you can't just turn off the TV and not pay attention and not be of the world stage and in it, because you have to actually deprogram. To deprogram means you have to recognize this closed system. It's closed and it's a duopoly. To be deprogrammed, you have to recognize first that the limited options they give you are constrained to prevent you from considering the existence of fake news and the long-term effects of accumulated fake news on our worldview. So every day you have a body of content, news and otherwise, that gets put into our collective memory, becomes history. And it's never corrected. The fake events that we refer to, staged events, simulated events, the big transformative psyops, they're never corrected. There's conspiracy theories about them, but they never subtract. So my point of it is, to be deprogrammed, one must not only recognize this for what it is, so you're no longer misinformed, now you're informed, but there's no one is informed in the system. You're either misinformed or very misinformed or under misinformed. So the people who aren't paying attention are under misinformed. They're not off world stage, because these are passive positions. To be informed is an active position. And by active, I mean due diligence. It means that you're actually getting information from outside of this box. So if you're not aware of news bending, which is real, history bending, which is real, it's a cumulative effect, and it's measurable, it's observable, it's demonstrable, then you're not deprogrammed. Because the program is the pre-existing script that we're all living through. The program that includes things like assassinations and terror attacks, things that are planned decades in advance. That's the program. And if you're going with the program, you're going with the consensus, you are far from deprogrammed. And every one of the pro and anti positions are contained in their program. That's what keeps this thing going. Lord Laney says ubiquitous psy-opera. Yeah, exactly. It's inescapable. It's incontestable. It's a successful conspiracy. All the other conspiracies that you come across are contained within it. It's a containment operation to keep you from exiting the box. And all of the popular conspiracy theories fit this category. What we're promoting here, we're offering here, is not a conspiratorial view of things. We're pointing out the active, ongoing conspiracy to keep us within a de facto world state church, a single one world government that has a monopoly on worldview and worldview creation. And the big reveal, the big paradigm shift, which is going to be hard for a lot of people to accept, is that when you start examining closely the media fakery, the simulated events, and you look at these things on a timeline, then you realize that we are living through a predetermined set of events. Yeah, there's real stuff happening every day, but the significant events that steer the news cycles that everyone bounces off of, the significant events that influence culture, how we see things, these events are simulated. And when you live in this world stage paradigm, you internalize their simulation with all their fake events. But the fact that things are planned decades in advance has significant implications, because it means that we have no power. That if you're inside of this box, or if you're inside the world stage, you have no power, like no real power. Politics is essentially a steam valve that gives you the illusion of control. And all the infighting, all of these political horseshoes are there to keep you distracted. So many conspiracy theorists tell me, oh, you guys are distracted by looking at the movies and looking into the details. I'm like, what do you mean? We're looking at the very architecture of mass deception. We're understanding how it works. We're not distracted here. Looking at the conspiracy, like someone said, you know, you're looking at these movies and these actors and these politicians, but shouldn't you be worried about Bill Gates and Elon Musk and the incoming technocracy? No, that's a distraction from the fact that our worldview is entirely engineered by this invisible government that supersedes all of the other ones. And this isn't really a stretch if you think about the obvious collusion between all world governments when it comes to major fake events. Nobody calls out anybody else's psyops, whether it's in our own American media or globally. Nobody calls out these fake events. And moreover, they all agree on fake space travel, on the big lies. Sync Kid says the need to pacify and control brings into question nihilism, another pacification mechanism. Yeah, black pill is nihilism 100%. But what's interesting too is that the the blue pill normie version of things includes all the terrible stuff. They just ignore it. So the mainstream is actually apathetic, which isn't the same as nihilistic, but they're numb to it. So it may as well be in effect. So we do live in a very nihilistic place, I think. Like we just accept it. Like, oh yeah, man's bad. Man's a virus. He's infecting the earth. There's a built-in misanthropy, even to accept the premise of climate change, which is the dominant, eschatology of our time, is to say we deserve it. Like God's going to judge us. Yeah, that's misanthropic. Man's so bad that God needs to punish us. Man's so bad the globe's going to punish us, or we're going to destroy ourselves with war. So there's a lot of nihilism that's built into this. We live in the end times. Even if you're not a religious nutcase, if you believe in the atom bomb and mutually assured destruction, then you've already accepted the premise that we're in the end times. And I notice a lot of mainstreamers are very flippant about, yeah, I think this planet killing asteroid is going to come get us, or the aliens are going to get us. Like they're very flippant about, yeah, we're all going to die. But the wokesters on the right and the wokesters on the left look at these people who are apathetic and like, oh, you guys are asleep, so we're awake. So they're just awake to the fake threats and they're more active about it. The key word here is fake. So you either don't care about the stuff that's going to kill us all, or you're flipping out over it. But either way, these things are fake. And I don't know which position is worse, being nihilistic and apathetic, or at least having activism in your blood and trying to fight the system. So I kind of think that the woke people are people of conscience. So I can't really bash them for it. But what I'm saying is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. They have great intentions. The guy in the corner with the sign that says, don't breathe the air because the chemtrails, yeah, he legitimately wants to save you. The anti-vaxxers, yeah, they want to save you. They want to save your babies. They want to save the world. The QAnons, you might laugh at the QAnon people who are waiting for JFK to rise from the grave and fight the deep state and arrest Hillary Clinton. You laugh at them, but they want to save you from the deep state. So there's a religiosity you have to consider here. Like when you see Mormons on bikes, they want to save you. Jehovah's Witnesses, Scientologists with their little contraptions to measure your stress levels. Again, they're trying to save you. So they have great intentions. They all do. All right, let's see what else we have here. Duets Les says, do furries need herd or pack immunity? Yeah, we're in the age of the lone furry killer. Hold on, I think I have a visitor here.
Good morning.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good, yourself?
Just working on something. How you doing?
Okay, I wish I was working. I was, my name's Philip, I'm sorry. I worked for you guys a while back.
Oh, okay.
Are you related to them?
I'm house sitting for a little while.
Okay. See, I want to see, I could rake up your leaves.
Yeah, if you want to.
Cool.
Yeah, if you want to. I think we're having some people over here or something. But yeah, if that's what you normally do, by all means.
Yeah, I just went down to this other guy, but he wasn't ready, so.
Okay, I'll let them know that you're here. What's your name again?
Philip Gonzalez.
Okay.
They knew me and my mother, the original owners, but.
Okay.
These ones, so the rakes and that, there's one right there.
All right, appreciate it. I'm glad you're using rakes. I'm so sick of leaf blowers.
You want me to bag them?
No, just do the piles. I'll bag it myself. Don't worry about that. I'll do it. I'll take care of that. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Let me see if I can find another rake.
All right, Anonymous366, here is your wrench. Sorry about that. I'm in a workstation. I'm in a shed, basically. And I'm house sitting for the time being. And there's some maintenance people who are here to do the leaves. All right. Well, anyway, I got to go. I think we've covered everything. If you have anything to say, just say hello or whatever. I'll give you a wrench really quick before I leave. I'm going to finish watching this horrible documentary, after which I will finish my review.